Continuing on with Season 7 of The Clone Wars, we hop on over to Episode 6, Deal, No Deal. We open up on Ahsoka and Trace tinkering in a shop, fixing Ahsoka's bike that she crashed with, and fixing Trace's ship. Their conversation, their friendship, feels completely natural to me. I like these two characters together. And it's also a little bit of a learning experience for Ahsoka too, which is always good for the show. Trace talks about kind of living down in the depths of Coruscant, right? Not ever thinking about going to a flight academy because it seemed so far out of her reach. She couldn't afford it. There's none down there. There's no close by. It's a very natural conversation that you would hear really in the real world, right? And I like the kind of realization that Ahsoka is having of the disparity between the top and the bottom, between these two worlds. The Clone Wars has always been ripe with these real world comparisons, right? Whether it be proxy wars or arms dealing, the show talks about the black market and how a lack of regulation can hurt a population. The show talks about meddling in the affairs of other nations, cultures, or in this case, planets and systems. The show has always been inspired overtly by real-world scenarios or situations, events, that kind of thing, peppering in little lessons here and there. Maybe a lot of folks missed it when they watched it as a kid. I didn't start watching the Clone Wars until 2017, and the parallels are pretty obvious, oftentimes very on the nose, but showing the disparity between the tip top and the bottom rung, and how getting by means something much different for Trace and Rafa than it does for the upper echelon of Coruscant. You know, it fits in with how the Clone Wars has always been. And it's also a lesson for Ahsoka. So yeah, I dig it. Let's break down what is going on here. So, Rafa takes a job. She needs a pilot. Trace has a ship. Trace wants to be the pilot on the job. There's bad blood between Rafa and Ahsoka, and the three of them all go on this job together. We're kind of out of the loop, and so is Ahsoka and Trace for much of this episode, on what the job is actually going to be. And as the episode progresses, we and Ahsoka and Trace learn more and more about what the job entails, right? At first, it's just Rafa describes it as something simple, but it becomes more and more complicated. We find out that they're going to be running spice. They have to go pick up the spice from Kessel. We see slave labor that's involved with mining this spice. And it's kind of an interesting conversation. They see the slaves down in the mining pit. At first they think they're droids, but they quickly find out that they're people down there looking like little ants, right? I think it's Rafa who said, that's impossible. The Republic would have put a stop to this long ago, and Ahsoka says, you would think so, or you would hope so, something like that. Once again, kind of Ahsoka seeing the big picture, kind of maybe being a little disenfranchised with how the Republic and the Jedi are conducting themselves, and not helping where they possibly could help. Seeing this slave labor, I'm actually kind of surprised that it didn't play a bigger role in this episode. Maybe it'll happen later down the road in this arc. I thought this was going to turn into like a almost like a freeing episode where they free these slaves on Kessel. But it was kind of a realization for Ahsoka that we can't really do much here, in a way. So they take this spice from Kessel and they're going to deliver it to the Pykes, these gangsters, these galactic gangsters called the Pykes that we've seen in past arcs and past episodes. And that's the meat and potatoes of what the story is here. One of my favorite things about this episode, and it just stood out to me majorly, are all these really great, grand shots as they're flying around in Trace's ship, which she called the Silver Angel, and this is kind of a running joke in the episode, which I liked. But yeah, these grand shots of the ship, flying by planets or coming down to land, and you see, it was just really well done, more so than any other episode I've ever seen, just kind of these grand shots, beautiful shots, not like dogfighting, not combat shots, but these just landscape shots with a ship flying through them, right? And then fantastic music played over it. Is one of my favorite things in this episode, and it kind of gave the episode a huge sense of adventure. It was one of the more adventurous episodes that I've seen. This crew of three hopping around from place to place with these grand shots, going on this job that we really don't know too much about because Rafa is keeping them intentionally in the dark. It once again felt very adventurous. I really like the three of them, the trifecta here. Ahsoka is kind of the moral center. She does the right thing. I think I said that in my last video too. She's kind of the moral center, the moral grounding of the Clone Wars. Rafa, on the other hand, is kind of willing to do whatever. The ends justify the means, right? Despite the negative implications, She's willing to do anything to make some money, pay off some debts, and help her sister, so she says. You know, the helping of my sister thing really seems at this point just to be something she says while she solves her own problems and drags Trace into her problems along for the ride, right? And then you have Trace, the innocent kid who's just getting jerked around and doesn't know much about much. It's a good group. It's an entertaining group for sure. And we further see the bad blood between Ahsoka and Rafa later in the episode. They're arguing about what to do with this spice, right? Ahsoka wants to go and give it to somebody who can turn it into medicine, which is another real world thing, right? They have this drug, they have this narcotic, which oftentimes in the real world is used for medicine, narcotics, or the opium epidemic, right? You can use it for legitimate medicine, but holy hell, do we need to kind of do something about that, right? So there's real world comparisons here with spice, the use of it for medicine, the use of it for illegal purposes or nefarious purposes, the transport and trafficking of the substance. It's yet again another real world comparison that, if you're paying attention, it's pretty on the nose, right? And when they're fighting, Trace dumps the spice. She says, nobody's gonna take my ship. She dumps it, it's gone, it's out in space, forever and ever, goodbye. And when they come to, deliver the spice that they no longer have to the Pykes, Ahsoka uses the Jedi mind trick on one of the Pykes. The Pyke hands over the credits, they dump they put out their empty spice boxes and they're found out, right? They're found out that they do not have the spice. They came empty-handed. They're gonna run away with the credits. Ahsoka used the mind trick and I'm sure this, using the mind trick puts Ahsoka in another ethical dilemma, which is always interesting. But in the end, they are held back by a tractor beam. They're trying to escape, but they're caught by a tractor beam. They have nowhere to go. And the episode ends with them being caught. Now, my big prediction here, halfway through the episode or so, maybe earlier on, Trace's ship, the Silver Angel, is flying out of Coruscant, which is another one of my favorite shots. I love that shot. It's flying up from the depths of Coruscant. It flies out. The music is just it's like the first flight, the first voyage of a ship. The music is triumphant and it's flying out. One of the best shots in the show, I think. Yeah, so as they're flying out, they kind of cross over a military lane. And they're told to stand down, basically leave the lane, get out of here, they're going to be arrested. We see Anakin kind of sensing Ahsoka on this ship. My guess here, and I could be completely wrong, and I'm probably completely wrong, but I think that was a little bit of a foreshadowing, a little bit of a tease of what's going to happen in the end. We saw, Anakin sensing that Ahsoka was on the ship, and maybe he's keeping tabs on her. Maybe he's gonna come save the day, and they're gonna come take down this spice operation, the Pykes, and this slave labor camp down on Kessel. That's kind of my prediction. It seems a little too predictable, but we'll see. So yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed these episodes so far with Ahsoka. They're pretty low key. We follow a small group of characters. They're fun to watch from very different backgrounds, butting heads on what to do, and I dig it. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. There's a lot that I liked about this episode. It was a fun, fast-paced, adventurous episode with some banter, a lot of butting of the heads. As I said, very different worlds clashing, and I'm curious where this is all gonna go. So yeah, gotta wait a week. HelloGreedo, out.